Well, hello there. And this is another episode of Critical Weight Theory. And today we're actually going to do a movie review on Thanksgiving. And of course, the movie has nothing to do with Thanksgiving. Well, I guess it kind of does because it is about family. But anyway, I was originally going to have sort of a conversation with a buddy of mine named Bob, but apparently got strep throat or something. So we're doing a movie review. This is Jacinta, a movie from 2020, and it is about family. So I guess maybe it could be about a theme that's related to Thanksgiving. You know, you have family get-togethers and whatnot. Only in this movie, the family in question has problems with addiction to drugs and you know, lots of prison type stuff is involved, and you're kind of rooting for the character. Well, it's not really a character; it's actually a documentary, but you're treating them as if they are characters almost because that's the weird thing about watching a documentary is that even though it's a true story being depicted, it sort of adds a layer of fictionalization or abstraction to it because you're not really watching the events as they unfold in your living room or something. So, there's a way that you almost live through the characters' lives from a safe distance, and that's one of the interesting things about a documentary like this because obviously not everyone has had close up front observations of like drug addiction or whatever and all that fun stuff. But I think that if you've ever been around alcoholics or something like that, it's not necessarily going to be all that different from watching the drug addictions depicted in the movie Jacinta. And it's directed by Jessica Earnshaw. It is about a title character whose name is Jacinta and her mother Rosemary. And there's sort of a dysfunctional relationship there to say the least. She introduced her, Rosemary introduced her mother to or not her mother, her daughter to drugs at an early age, and the drug addiction stuck, and there's some prostitution involved, and a lot of those kind of dark elements. And this movie does a pretty good job of getting into the nature of this type of dysfunctional relationship. And this was not the most difficult film I've ever watched. um, to be honest, maybe I'm just desensitized or something like that, but as somebody who has seen alcoholics and whatnot and all that kind of stuff, it was sort of familiar territory in some respects here and there. In fact, I've had experiences that were about as dark as anything depicted in this film, and I haven't even had the darkest kind of life. And I'm not a drug addict myself, and never have been. Um, but it's still a good documentary. My expectations weren't high, and it was hard to know how to take these incredibly complicated women and their histories, um, you know, and make sense of it all. And there was a little bit of a debate in my brain about whether these characters really are complicated or if they're actually just simple. And it really is just a tale about people who made dumb decisions in their lives. And when I found myself um, sort of looking at it that way, I realized why I should actually take a step back. Remember that these are human beings; they're not like merely things for me to joke about or whatever. And that's one of the things that sort of helped me appreciate the documentary better. Is I was trying to put on my best personality while watching this. My most empathetic self, and sure enough, Jacinta was a better movie when I tried to, put myself in the character's shoes and see things through their eyes and all that kind of stuff. So the documentary brought out a unique intimacy from the main characters again, as you might call them. And Jacinta is actually a likable person. You might really see how her struggle is a very common type of problem in the world. And the filmmakers became an extension of their subjects in a way, even though we never actually see the filmmakers. When you're depicting them, you become part of the story. And I suppose when you're a viewer, you also become a part of the story in a weird way. They revealed a vulnerability and a strength that to the characters that they perhaps didn't even know that they had. It's a tearjerker kind of movie. And I often tend to judge drug addicts, as I have stated earlier, because I've never been a drug addict. I've never been an alcoholic either. In fact, I don't drink or anything like that. So again, I had to back off a little and kind of assess it from less of an emotional place, or less of a place where I was involved. I tried to be almost like a passive observer. And I, th- I think I think I better experienced the movie from being sort of distant from it in a way. And there were things revealed that I had already assumed that could be true about Jacinta and her mom, and all that. But the raw access to these people lets them have the confidence to tell the story that they wanted and perhaps needed to tell. That was really another thing that made the movie better, because they were honest about their lives and all that. They really didn't try to hide their struggles or anything like that. So the film low key presents issues of, about social mobility and stuff like that. Although it's not really an overtly political movie, there's nothing really that preachy about it either. It's just a sort of a journalistic thing, and it reveals that the characters are all works in progress. Again, I use the word characters loosely. I find myself saying that they are characters, even though they are really real people here. And we see the trials and the tribulations of a contemporary family that's fighting to stay afloat, and mostly against their own drug addiction problems. And it's not like there aren't any other topics here that you could find. There's some sexual abuse that's mentioned and things like that, which obviously might be psychologically at least partly why some people become addicted to drugs, or whatever. Maybe that's why they're depressed and all that kind of stuff. And there is some hint of them living amidst economic hardship. It's mentioned like once or twice that it's part of the environment that they're in, and that maybe it adds to the sense of hopelessness that some of the characters feel. But there's really not that much overtly political turmoil here. And even though a person might be critical of the cops, like in their own personal uh philosophy or whatever, when it comes to all these political debates and discussions. I would say Jacinta is not like an anti-cop movie or anti-prison or anything like that. Neither is it really like a pro-police or pro-prison movie either. It's not like it's not like a cheerleader for the drug war or against the drug war. It's just kind of showing you how the events unfold and the lives of Jacinta and her mother. And it's maybe something that they could have done a little bit differently in this movie. Not saying I would want them to be, imposing sort of bias on the movie that it didn't go with. But I do think that maybe there was a little bit of room to explore more of those issues. You know what I mean? Like, was she treated fairly in prison? Was there any sort of way that the prison could have, dealt her a better hand? Like, could they have actually helped her perhaps earlier on with, like any of the allegations of abuse that, she faced or anything like that? It's one of those things that might have been a missed opportunity. I don't know. It probably just didn't come up that much during the time that they filmed it. And of course, there are tons of other issues they could have included. Like, they could have talked about, how rising rents and stuff like that might impact the economy, or whatever. Like, they could have talked about whether or not Jacinta has any sort of economic assistance, or like a job opportunity, or things like that. Like, was there a jobs program, or anything? So that the movie doesn't really go over every little detail that might be applicable to Jacinta, but at the same time, you do get the sense that she really wants to improve her life, but her drug addiction ultimately makes her lose touch with her family, and of course with herself, because at the end of the day, a lot of addictions are ultimately a way to sort of distract from your own problems. I know there's a physical component to it, like you become physically addicted, but ultimately there's a psychological sort of thing that happens too, where you're often trying to use drugs as a way to not face your own demons, or past abuse, or whatever. There's a lot of reasons that people become addicted to things, and it's not just the addiction itself, although of course that's certainly a factor. I don't mean to downplay that and make it sound like it's always mind over matter, but at the same time, sometimes it is about mind over matter a little bit. You know what I mean? But anyway, I would recommend this movie. It's not like it's the best movie I've ever seen. I wouldn't recommend it to everyone. Like, if you're in the mood for a light-hearted type of movie, this wouldn't be it. But at the same time, it's worth checking out. And I don't know if they're ever going to make a sequel. Like, I don't know how documentaries tend to do that. I know sometimes they do, but I think it's pretty rare. And well, that's all I have to say about it. I guess have a happy Thanksgiving, and yeah, I've said enough. All right. Goodbye.